Or just let me give you a quick. I reached a point in my um, approach to uh, objecting to the the basic indifference has been paid to our rising incidents of illiteracy, and I made reference to the fact that there was a 5 week national summer camp program getting
Yes.
underway for South Right. Okay, all that was carried. And so I reached the point where I was quoting Dr. Shabab, who is a literacy specialist and who has literacy camp, and she was saying that her final word, she was saying that if your child reaches 10 years old and cannot it, cannot read, it is your fault. And I support that program. But she's saying that parents have to accept full responsibility for whether their children can read or not by going through a program of stimulating them from the earliest days, etc. And I'm supportive of that. But then, at that same opening ceremony of the reading camp, the annual camp by Dr. Bob, Minister Chad Blackman, he did not agree with her that is the parents' responsibility. He said, and he's the Minister of Educational Transformation, which is supposed to reform us. And under ex-Minister of Education, McConnell's reform now under Minister Chad Blam, it's transformational. All right. And he's saying, I want to differ a bit from Dr. Bab. I don't want to place any blame on any one entity. Our society is made up of different opportunities, but also challenges. Those challenges require all of us as an ecosystem to play our part. Blackman stressed the importance of shared responsibility among parents, schools, government, private sector, and civil society. So he's saying he does not think it is. He's not. He thinks the blame has to be shared, and he does not agree with Dr. Bab that the parents who have the first response, the first exposure to their children, should carry the major response in that regard. But I am with, like I said, I'm with Dr. Bad on that because I'm sure Marcia that you yourself would have played a role in your children's early development. It's national, but for some time I've been arguing on this question that if in the same way when women become pregnant, they get prenatal or postnatal education, information, training, what to expect, what to do with it. I'm saying that they themselves should be exposed as part of that preparation for the birth of the child or children. Should be exposure to the fact that it is important to stimulate, to expose, to read to them because they're learning from the time their eyes are open, and it's better to implant stuff that will help them develop educationally that will pay off at school when they get to school, rather than have them go to school where the teacher at 4 or 5 has to start teaching them what could have been and should have been and used to be done at home. So it's an advantage, and that in itself, I think, is something that we have to make part of our national approach to 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 this whole question of illiteracy. And one of the things that disappointed me when I saw the national program in the newspaper about the program, 50 locations in every parish, all 11 parishes have been catered by this program, which I said we have 6,000 children over 5 weeks. And I said a place should have been found if there was sufficient recognition and appreciation for the need to stamp out illiteracy as a national mission. In the same way we sort of stamp out under the NCDs and heart attacks, etc. That should be our mission, social mission to get that social disease. I'm saying that we should have found a place for the library. The library has a mobile service that could have been incorporated into the program with 50 locations. Though that program, the library service could go a number of programs each day during a number of locations. Expose children to reading, join the library, tell them about the benefits of the public library. I see the public library is so on that they even have a crossover band at kiddie school, UMS. So they're exposing children to arts and the culture and performing, etc., costuming, etc. But I'm saying that a conscious effort should be made if the conceptualists of the band of the program were on the ball to incorporate, let have the mobile service that goes to the branches. I understand there's probably only one mobile unit now, a van that travels with books, physical books, and go to various schools, various locations. That is so. That should be.
But Mr.
That should,
Moripa, there's a question, and I'm trying to involve the comment section as much as possible until we get the phone lines sorted out. Patsy B is saying, what about parents who are intellectually challenged? Parents who are intellectually challenged. There are lots of persons who cannot read. How are they going to be responsible for their children's education?
well, clearly, if that were so, if that is so, a well-defined and designed program would take account of that and make provision for both the parent, if they can, or the child. But you should not just be left to fate and whatever. In the same way that provisions are made to parents or children who are hard of hearing or speech problem, that can be part of the household where the social services can incorporate them in a way, in the same way that people who have money have tutors come to their house. In the same way that the government provides for home help for seniors, we're going to clean the house, cook for them, change them. All right, there's community nursing. Why can't there be community literacy programs? Go to the household with the parents and involve them in that regard. That is with imagination and looking for fresh ways to get to the purpose. That is the way to do it. Because the library service, we've had a free library service for more than 100 years, I think. The Carnegie Library, the building next to the Supreme Court buildings on Corus, not the new Supreme Court, the old Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm.
And as instructor, that building, it says Carnegie Free Library because it was donated to Barbados by the philanthropist, the American philanthropist Carnegie, through the hard work of a colonial governor, etc. To denote this one, to build that library. It's a lovely structure. I don't know if you've had some. You probably have not had a chance to go there because when you came, it's probably in disrepair. But I myself was part of a government that had talked about restoring it. They were going to start with the roof. So far, it has not happened. And they left government in 2003. The government left in 2008. It is back now. The interim government between 2008 and 2018 did not do anything about it. And since then, there has been no improvement. There has instead, right next door to that property on Quarry Street, was an old Supreme Court. That has been remodeled, refashioned, modernized into it's now called the Henry Ford.
Mm-hmm.
There is Simmons Complex. That can be repaired. But right next door is a glaring example of a lovely, architecturally lovely building that nobody saw the wisdom of providing for that rehabilitation. And right now, the library is scotching over on Independence Square in a building that used to be occupied by Martin Living, I think it was.
Yeah.
But it does not offer the same facilities to their atmosphere as that. And I'm saying that's why I'm saying it's a national disgrace. Both for the illiteracy to be allowed to exist, to blossom, to become rampant, and for the indifference that has been extended towards it. And I'm saying that if this educational transformation is going to mean anything to Barbados and Barbadians other than just a label, you have to go to first principles. In the same way that the West Indies cricket is not doing well because people can't bat, they can't field, they can't bowl, they know to. Those are the basics. If in any field of endeavor, Marcia, I'm sure if you do not cover the basics, you have problems. And if you do not cover literacy, society will continue to run awry because people do not know anybody. They're not exposed to because when you're reading and writing, it engages your whole being in a way that a tablet cannot, because it does not make the same impact of your engagement holding a pencil, piece of chalk, reading and forming. It is a whole different physiological, psychological process that involves a person being rather than a cold punching the tablets are already made for you. You want
Mhm.
to say something, Marcia?
Yeah, I was I'm back at this question that the person had about the parents who cannot read. I remember um living in Jamaica, and the Jamal program was established through the Michael Manley government, and that is something as a child I could remember very, very clearly. This Jamal program, and one of the things about it was, my mother was part of, teaching the older people in the community to read. So the truth of the matter is that unless those community programs are in place, I tend to understand what Mr. Chad Blackman is saying, is that at this stage, to put it entirely at the parents, it's a little, unless I'm misunderstanding what you're saying, it's not, you can't, because there's so many. I'm thinking of even going back, looking at some of the children that I have met, whether they're 14, 15, who can't read, their parents can barely read, so we have to be able, outside of those community programs, which I think, as you're saying, is the only way that it can be solved, is if the community, like that Jamal program, comes together to help that child and to help the parent. Outside of that, what are we going to do? Because we don't have those programs in Barbados at the moment. So a parent who cannot read at the moment, who is illiterate, how, outside of those programs as that you're talking about, how would they help their child?
I was saying that is a responsibility of the state
Ah, okay.
to work to provide those kind of, in the same way they provide vaccines or school meals. Say if you feed the body, you feed the mind. And I'm saying that an alert member of parliament, for example, who is catering to the needs, should be able to identify the person, even if being this, he should be able to identify a person if a member of parliament, he or she is in close contact with his households, observe their behavior, observe, they should be aware and therefore initiate the help to come to them rather than discourage that. So the same way it could do for vaccine, inoculate the children for the meals, etc. Though in the same way you know when they want meals, in the same way you know when they want medical attention, that is all part of the social service. The initiative, but I'm saying that, first of all, while that can be done, well, that is the government's responsibility on society in general. A parent should be so well aware of the needs and development needs and stages of their children that they themselves can be aware, even if they themselves can't. I had I my mother tells me that I had a great grandmother who had come offspring of a slave, could not read or write, but she ran a shop out of her head. She subdued that with a fantastic memory, can tell what you credited there, to how much money you paid, etc. So I'm saying there's a way of compensating for the acknowledgement, but you have to acknowledge it first and book a program to do it. Otherwise, I remember a brother-in-law of mine who was an education officer, then he's dead now. He was a teacher, education officer, then he was principal at Early College. When he retired, he went to work in the prisons teaching teaching prisoners to read. And he said
Mhm.
that he would have a class of about 20, 30, all low and aggressive, want to fight, can't communicate, very hostile. And by the time they're able to write the letter A, B, C, by the time they could write their name, I
Barbados
was
here in Barbados.
in Barbados. They became,
Minute, because that's important point, because I saw that someone was saying before we had the break, when the whole thing, the show had stopped. Somebody said, why are you saying that there is a widespread illiteracy rate in Barbados? Why, or a widespread illiteracy in Barbados? Where's the stats for it? But you're saying that in the prison, that years ago your family member goes in and try to teach him to write the letter A
yeah,
in
and
Barbados.
yeah, yes. And even more than that, their eyes open, literally open wide to me when they can write, when they can learn to write their own name and recognize. They give them identity, their behavior, and attitude change.
How long ago was that, Mr. Murray?
As I was thinking about 20, about 27 years ago, that was then. But there was a story recently from the from I think Sherry Willoughby or
Yes,
someone who said that 95% of people are reading like 3-year-olds. But the
let's
criminals
repeat
get
that
it
because
in.
the person who asked the question is not in Barbados. So, what the this study that was because they were asking about the surveys and so on. What on what basis are you
I
saying that? But this survey was done by this is a professional,
professional.
right?
And
And
they
there's
said 95% of the children were reading at the level of a 3-year-old.
95%
5% of the
of
people, people involved in the survey, right,
mhm.
were reading at it. But apart from that, we every year we hear children leaving school with no certification, can't read. I mean, we don't have an up-to-date comparison, but there's enough anecdotal evidence from the education authorities themselves that indicates that it is a real problem. All I'm saying is let's recognize it for what it is. Let's not pretend it doesn't exist because it's doing damage to the country. I just saying in the person in the prison system and in crime. That is part of the fallout illiteracy because people can be groomed if they're illiterate, given limited and made them beholden and groomed and conscious because they're not taught to think for themselves or to read, to write. So they're being controlled. So there are a lot of facets to this issue. I'm saying it's not beyond Barbados, where we took pride in education. We had teachers that went down the Caribbean teaching and heading school. That was part of our invisible export.
Mhm.
And now we've come to the point, and I know that very few people could not. There was always some level of illiteracy of age, but there was not where it was showing up in the school system, the secondary system like that. Something is wrong, and I'm saying that when we're talking about transformation, let's go back to that. First, start
To
with
go back. Okay, so you're saying because this is a thing that especially Barbadians who are living outside of Barbados, these are not sometimes they're not aware. I remember, Mr. Murray, it was about probably 5 years ago that this woman you see sitting here had the shock of her life, where I was helping some children in the pandemic who they were out of school, and I'm looking at fourth formers and fifth formers sitting in front of me, Mr. Murray, and there were quite a number of things that were wrong. But one of the things I realized is that quite a number of them could not read
there you are.
right
I,
here in Barbados. Now, if
well,
somebody, honestly, if somebody had told me that and I did not experience it, I would believe that I think they're exaggerating a bit. But I'm broadcasting from my school today, and right at my school, I'm telling, I was shocked for days. I couldn't believe it. And
see,
so
that,
there,
that,
and
that,
here's the
go
thing.
ahead.
The last thing I'll say is that they were supposed to be doing CXCs. And they were supposed to be doing CXCs. I tell you, I wanted to say the schools that they were from. Fourth and fifth formers they could not read. It's shocking.
So you're proving my point. You, you,
I'm
you've,
proving your
you're
point.
supporting my point.
I don't have the stats, but I'm
Right, right. But the point in this area, for those persons abroad who might be think that in this area, Barbados, the image of Barbados in the society changed as regards crime. It has happened in other areas of social change for the worse. So, and in this area, you would never have, given our historical perception and stereotype of a highly literate society, literacy in the high 90s. One would not therefore conclude that there could be illiteracy or such rampant illiteracy. But the reality is that in the same way that there is crime as an evidence of social decay in Barbados, I'm saying the illiteracy, the level and extent of illiteracy, is also a sign of the decay in the fundamentals of the educational system. And if you do not recognize that, we'll just be, you know what they say about if you put a pig, if you put lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig.
Yes,
All right. If
it's
you
true.
there used to be a say in Barbados, you don't put icing on gingerbread. You put icing on a cake, not on a because you're really covering up an inferior product with some that is semblance of goodness and sweetness and niceness. And the two don't match. I'm saying that unless we have a frontal, comprehensive, realistic approach, all this money and effort that we are talking about in anything will be a waste of time when it comes to that.
Mhm. You
That's
know,
all.
yeah, and someone is saying here, there, I'm trying to get some of the comments in before Miss McLean comes in. Someone says here that how are they? I think it's Pedro who said it. How are they going to be able to do education reform? If the children, if we're having such high illiteracy rate, um, but someone says here, I just want to read a couple of the comments, Miss
Yeah.
Murray. Give me a moment here. Someone There's an interesting one here. Why am I not seeing it anymore? Okay. I'm not seeing it. There was a very interesting one here. That is the thing that I think it would be good. I know that a study was done in the prison. Okay. So what we're quoting from is in the prison. It'd be interesting to for a new for research to be done to really determine the true literacy rates of Barbados. A lot of times we are going off what was then, but we have not done. We need to do current literacy rates in
And, and,
Barbados.
and
Go
I'm
ahead.
saying the raw materials there because you only have to look at you only have to look at the 11 plus results. If you look at that raw data off of the CXU, that would give you some indications. But I'm saying until we do that, we are back at the wrong tree. For example, I'm hearing constant reference being made that to show we're going to transform the education system. We're going to
Mhm.
teach you how to code, how to code. But coding involves reading and writing.
Yes.
So if you not only that, Marcia, coding is no longer as much a human endeavor. AI now does its own coding. So we might very well be producing people with the training for an occupation that no longer exists because given the rampant spread of AI, that's almost aborted. For example, I also heard saying that there's going to be labs in schools, in primary schools, to teach children how to read how to create beats, musical beats. But if you're into music, you still have to be able to read and write too.
Mhm.
So I'm
Well,
saying all of that
hold
is
a
just
minute. So, hold a
camouflage.
minute here. Adrian Hines is saying that he has two comments here, and I would love for him. He said if someone claims that there is widespread illiteracy, they would need to back that up with official statistics, academic studies, or credibility survey. And he's saying here, hold a second, he's saying that the raw data does not suggest illiteracy is widespread in Barbados. So, Adrian, that means you would have done the study and the research if you have done that, and you know where that is because I just said that we know that in the prison, the study was done in the prison, and but it has not been done outside of the prison as far as I know. So, if you have the data that suggests that it is not widespread in Barbados, I would love to know what study that is, right? But over to you, Mister. But you're right. Yeah.
No, I never, I spoke of anecdotal evidence. I talk of my experience and other people know experience. I talk about the comments in the press for the
Mm-hmm.
past few years about peer leaders. So that raw information. I never claimed to have I think I expected that of Mr. Hines.